Thank you, Guido. I'm going to share my screen and hopefully this all goes according to plan here. Just give me a second. All right, can I get a thumbs up, Megan and Kristen, if you can see my screen as it was being presented before this started? Okay, wonderful. Thank you. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have the post-lunch workshop session, so we are going to try to get you excited about organic certification. Today's workshop is how to prepare for organic certification. I am Grace Jackson, and I am from the Farmer Services team at CAFF. I support farmers in the Central Valley with organic transition and certification, and I'm excited to bring together today's speakers to share insights into the certification process. Over the next hour, we will cover the key steps of organic certification, and we have a special focus on inspection preparedness. This session is part of the conference's organic track, so if you're interested in learning more about organic growing practices, be sure to check out the schedule for additional workshops happening this week. We're going to reserve the last 10 to 15 minutes for audience questions, so as Guido said, please drop your questions into the Q&A box at any time, and we will answer those as we go and get to more at the end of the presentation. Today, I'm joined by two organic experts. Megan Robertson is an expert organic business consultant and regarded triple scope organic inspector. She has worked closely with hundreds of farms and food businesses throughout California as an inspector for CCOF and other certifiers, and previously as a sales representative for Johnny's Selected Seeds. Kristen Draz is a co-owner of FogDog Farm, a 10-acre certified organic vegetable farm in the foothills of the Sierras in its 10th season of growing. I support farmers in the Central Valley with organic certification, food safety, value-added products, and access to the California Family Farmer Emergency Fund. The Farmer Services team at CAFF also manages the Small Farm Technology Hub, so we have lots of folks on our team that wear different hats. I encourage you to check out more of our services on our website at caff.org. I'm going to start today's workshop by going over the basics of organic certification. Then Megan will dive deep into the inspection process, and Kristen will round out the workshop by sharing how FogDog maintains certification each year through efficient record keeping. So I'll start by talking about organic and what does organic mean? Organic agriculture is a production system that uses a variety of practices to support on-farm resource cycling, promote ecological balance, and conserve biodiversity. Common practices in organic agriculture include crop rotation, cover crops, composting, and biological pest control. Organic production is regulated by the U.S. Department of Agriculture under the National Organic Program, and these regulations set clear standards for organic farming, ensuring that when customers buy organic products, they know that the product was grown without synthetic pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers, and is GMO-free. To become certified, farms must undergo an annual inspection conducted by third-party certifiers, and these certifiers themselves are accredited by the National Organic Program and are responsible for ensuring that farms comply with organic standards. After certification, producers can use the USDA organic label on their signage, product labels, and their marketing materials. So why would a producer choose to go through organic certification? Well, organic is much more than just input substitution. Organic agriculture benefits animal welfare by supporting better living conditions for animals, the environment by improving soil health and conserving water, and human health by reducing exposure to synthetic chemicals and GMOs. Organic products typically command higher prices due to the certification process, the higher cost of production in organic, and the growing demand. Organic food sales have been growing consistently since 2008, reaching $9.6 billion in 2022, and California led with $3.7 billion in sales. This graph here from USDA shows that organic specialty crops are among the top sellers of organic products. Your operation can get certified for crop production, livestock, processed products, and wild harvested plants like mushrooms, seaweed, and maple syrup. In order to be certified organic, the land must be free of all prohibited substances for at least 3 years. And the 3-year transition period starts from the date of the last prohibited material to the day of harvest or sale of an organic crop. If you sell more than $5,000 in organic products per year, your operation must be certified through a third party. But if you sell less than $5,000, then you would only have to register through CDFA if you're in California, but there are some restrictions as far as how you can market your products as organic. For example, you wouldn't be able to use the USDA organic seal on your product marketing. And then farms and processors must be inspected annually by their certifier. Certification is a multi-step process and will be unique to your farm. In general, the steps that I'm going to go through on the next couple of slides are the ones that your farm will go through, but the order might be different for your farm. So one of the first steps would be to get prepared by reviewing organic requirements and kind of what you're signing up for, what the expectations are, and also research certifiers to select the one that you want to work with. If you haven't already, a beginning step would also be to implement organic practices on your farm and stop using any prohibited materials. Developing an organic system plan using your certifier's template would be a next step. An OSP is a many-page plan that gives a blueprint for your farm's current and planned organic production practices. And you would use the OSP template that your certifier has. So that's why another reason why it's important to select a certifier and before you get to the OSP stage. Then you would submit your application and your completed OSP to your certifier and register with the CDFA. As I mentioned, registration with CDFA would need to be done prior to your first organic sale and before getting certified by a third party. So after your application and OSP have been approved by your certifier, which is often a back and forth process, answering additional questions, an inspector will be assigned and they will conduct an on-site inspection of your operation. Then your certifier will review your inspector's report, address any concerns with you directly, which depending on how many questions they have or issues, maybe a back and forth process as well. And then after being issued certification, you can start using the USDA label and marketing your products as USDA certified organic. That does not end the process though, because certified operations must maintain certification year after year and must keep up record keeping, update their OSP, and prepare for their annual inspection every year to remain certified. I'm going to go over a few very brief inspection basics because Megan is going to talk to us a lot about this in more detail. But as I mentioned, an organic inspection or an organic inspector will inspect your operation on behalf of a third-party agent or your certifier to make sure that your operation complies with organic rules and that what's said to be done in your organic system plan is being followed through on the ground. Inspectors will look through all aspects of production, including records, and walk the farm. And certifiers bill for the time it takes to inspect your farm and any follow-up. So preparing for your inspection before an inspector arrives will save you time and money. And again, every organic operation must be inspected every year. A question that we get often is, how much does organic certification cost? And our favorite answer is that it depends. The total cost of certification includes your annual application fee, an annual certification fee, and an annual inspector fee, plus whatever you pay to CDFA's state organic program. The organic certification fee structure varies between certifiers. Some certifiers charge based on gross sales. So the higher gross sales, the higher certification fee you will have, while others charge a flat fee. The total cost for smaller operations ranges from $700 to $1,000 a year, but again, that's just an estimate. There is some good news, slightly good news, that the USDA does have a cost share program that reimburses producers up to 75% or $750 of eligible certification costs. And this program has been around for many, many years, and it's currently on hold with the Farm Bill appropriations. The Farm Bill continued funding is going through, but the USDA cost share program does not have mandatory continued funding. And so we're not sure if this program will be funded in 2025 or with the signing of a new Farm Bill. Okay, and with that, I am going to pass it over to Megan. Megan, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Great.
Thanks, Grace. Hi, thanks for joining us today. I'm Megan. I am going to talk to you about inspection because that is what I've spent the last several years doing nonstop all over the state, all different types of farms, processors, livestock. I do it all. I would love to see questions, so throw them into the Q&A anytime if you have any, and I will try to address them. When Grace asked me to speak today, we kind of said, well, what do you want to talk about? And I said, I can talk about anything because this is something that I'm very much involved in. So even if your questions kind of go outside of what the main topic is today, feel free to throw them out. It's a good opportunity if you have something that you came to learn this week. So I'm going to talk about preparing for a flawless organic inspection. Things your inspector wishes you knew. This is the things that when I talk to my inspector friends are just common sense things that we go, oh, why do people make this so hard on themselves? Because there's just some very simple things that if you focus on, you can make this process a lot easier. Grace, are you in charge of slide flipping? Okay, cool. So some of these things kind of dive into a little bit to what Grace already talked about. Some of the considerations you want to make before you get certified. You know, we talked about what the cost is in dollars a little bit. There's also some costs in production changes, infrastructure, equipment, anything like that, depending on what your farm is doing, if you have to make changes. But I think one of the most underappreciated or underconsidered aspects of the cost is the time and the effort it takes to do the record keeping. I see so many people who get really frustrated because they come into this kind of with the wrong idea about what the requirements are, and it turns out a little bit different and it's frustrating. But if you can come in understanding like what you're signing up for and what your plan is, it doesn't have to be. So weighing the options, I would say, I think we're definitely all proponents of organic production and following organic principles on your farm. I think we're all proponents of organic certification here, but only when it makes sense for your business, because above all, we want small farms to be successful and be financially successful. And so if certification isn't where your business is at, I wouldn't dive into it because there are costs associated. And if you are not recouping some of that cost by having higher value at the farmer's market or with your customers, or if somebody's not paying you more or you're not having better opportunities to market your products because of your organic certification, it might be something that you want to hold off on. I certainly see a lot of businesses that certify because it reflects their values and the values of their brand. And if that's you and you want to do it anyways, go for it. Grace, you can move me forward. So before you get certified, again, get to know the organic standards because you're responsible for how these apply on your farm. You might call into your certifier and ask them a question, but they might not fully understand like what your farm is or what your business is. They might give you the wrong information. It might seem overly confusing, but if you really just go straight to those organic standards and kind of look at what is the actual language in the organic standard that applies to my farm, and get that in your head at least once when you're going in, because I think sometimes it's simpler than we make it out to be once we kind of get into all the forms. The other thing is, like I mentioned, like some people are kind of disappointed when they realize that it's not really what they thought it was going to be. So when you go into organic certification, you are entering into an agreement with the USDA Agricultural Marketing Service. And sometimes the standards aren't what your vision of organic is. And so make sure that that is something that you're ready to sign up for too, is that this program is a good fit for you. If you have a different idea of what organic means on your farm, that's something to consider. And it is true that certification can be a little bit more taxing on small farms because it has to be created as kind of a big umbrella that covers everybody, big and small. And so it is just the way that it goes, that sometimes that makes it harder on small farms to keep up with the requirements that the bigger businesses have to do. And that's just part of the certification process problem. But if you do this, if you get a good understanding, if you go in knowing what you're doing, knowing what you're getting into, you're going to be very much empowered to do it well and make it a smooth process. You flip me. Okay, so Grace mentioned the organic systems plan. The organic system plan is just a bunch of forms. So when you apply for certification, they'll make you fill out a whole bunch of forms, and at the end of it, we put those all together and we call it your organic systems plan. Sometimes that confuses people because they're like, I filled out a bunch of forms, but I don't know what this plan is. So that's what it is. This is your agreement with your certifier and with the USDA, so it's very important to keep it accurate and up to date. I see all the time people who just go through the renewal every year and click through the buttons and don't ever actually go in and update their forms. It can add a lot of time to your inspection. It can add a lot of confusion. It can create potential for non-compliances. And so I think it's really important to just make sure you're keeping that up to date and take it seriously, because it's a real agreement that you've entered into. This is not something to take lightly. So you should have a copy of it always and know what's in there. The job of the inspector at inspection is to verify your compliance and verify your capacity to comply. So to make sure that everything that's going on in your farm or business fits with your organic systems plan, is part of the agreed upon plan, fits within the regulations. I think sometimes people get disappointed because they want their inspector to look more at their practices in the field and on the ground, because we're really proud of what we're doing. But the reality of inspection is it's paperwork heavy, and we certainly look at everything else too. When your inspector comes, they're going to want to see all your fields, all your facilities, everything like that. But it's pretty easy to kind of glance around and see what's going on there. The records is where we really get into kind of the deeper, more difficult parts. Oh, and remember to submit your updates anytime throughout the year and don't save those for your inspection. Grace, you want to flip me? Okay, so preparing in advance for your inspection. This is all pretty straightforward stuff, but I see people struggle year after year, like for decades, always feeling like they're caught off guard. They don't know what's going on. They're going into inspection going, I have no idea what is about to happen. Um, if you go into your organic systems plan or into the organic standards, you can get a pretty good idea of what we're going to ask for. Or if you talk to your certifier and get kind of a list, you should be able to prepare. So some things I recommend having, you can get a copy of your previous year's inspection report that gets sent to you every year. So once you're already certified and you get that, hang on to that because it has all the questions and all the answers. And so from year to year, the questions don't change much, the answers don't change much. And that way you don't get caught off guard. You know what questions are coming. You've got something in front of you that's going to kind of help guide you. Also have a copy of your organic systems plan. Like I said, that's kind of the goal of inspection is to verify that everything in there is accurate, up to date. If you're going to make any changes at inspection, write those into a summary to give to your inspector. Don't just rely on telling them or them remembering or it getting to the right place. If you want to make sure that it gets done right, put it in writing. I also recommend having a summary of the business that you've done over the past year or since your last inspection, because your inspector is going to ask you about those things. It's good to just kind of have that in a summary or jotted down. It will give you a good place to start. For example, if you're doing mixed vegetables on your farm and you have something that has a summary of here's how much we sold at the farmer's market, here's how much went to our CSA, here's the crops. If you have some sort of crop year summary, that can just make everything go real smooth. Sales records and purchase records, we want to see all those for all your organic inputs. If you've got livestock, feed records are always going to be audited, all of them. Equipment cleaning records, if you have equipment that goes to organic and conventional farms, is shared between those. Natural resource monitoring record was a requirement that was added a few years back, and that throws people for a loop sometimes, but it can really be anything. It can be soil tests, it can be notes of observations you made on your farm, it can be photos. There just needs to be something to check that box. There is, I mean, if you look online, there's kind of better descriptions of what all of those things are. If you're using organic seed, great. If you can't get organic seed or planting stock, you need to document that you searched for it and that it's not commercially available. That needs to be in writing. Production records, harvest records, input records, planting logs, and your CDFA registration. These are things that your inspector is always going to ask you for every single time. So have them ready, know it's coming. I would say 90% of the time when I ask for these things, people go, oh yeah, where is that? Oh, I don't have it. And that costs money. It takes time. So if you take the time to prepare, it will just make that day a lot easier. Grace, you can flip me forward. So one thing that your inspector is going to be doing is they are going to have a checklist of boxes. And so again, like I said, you know, sometimes I think people want their inspector to spend a little bit more time looking at what they're doing in the field, but to check all those boxes, it's a lot of the record keeping stuff. And so the records have to include the planting records with these pieces of information, the input records with these pieces of information, harvest records, sales records, purchase records. And so regardless of what a wonderful organic farmer you are, if your records don't meet these, your inspector is going to have to write that up as an issue. One thing to actually, Grace, go ahead and flip me forward, I think. No, maybe not. One thing I was going to mention, I thought it was in here somewhere, was that If there's not a record, you should make one. For example, if you have a farm and you didn't have any inputs on your farm, make a record that says you had no inputs, because your inspector needs to check a box that says that you keep records, or, that you're compliant or you're capable of compliance. And so having those kind of records is going to help you sail through those kinds of things as well. So even if you don't have a harvest, even if you didn't plant anything, even if you didn't have sales, have examples of what those records are. They need to exist. And they have to be legible and they have to contain all the information. It's not really a record if you have to explain it. So you should be able to hand your inspector the records and they should know what all these things are without any questions. Okay, you can flip me forward. This is a list of just common stuff that I run into a lot at farm inspections. You have to have every material that you use in your field needs to be prior approved with your certifier. So you need to send them either like a label or you need to add it to a list. It has to be pre-approved before you use it. Doesn't matter if it's OMRI listed or not. It has to be in your organic systems plan or it's not approved for your use. If you have things that you're getting from other farms, or like, for example, if you get manure from a neighboring dairy farm, every certifier handles these things a little bit differently. I know with CCOF, they have a special form that you have that farmer sign off on to say that there's nothing prohibited in that material. So if there's anything that doesn't fit into the standard list, don't just ignore it. Contact your certifier and ask them how you get that on your list. Also, that includes seed coatings, pellet coatings, inoculants. All of those should be on your materials list. A lot of people fail to document their organic seed search. This can be a really simple document where you wrote down, I shopped these 4 catalogs for vegetable seeds and, made sure that I was only buying organic when it was available. You have to do something. Your records can be whatever you make of them, but they have to exist. Livestock requires a lot of record keeping. So if you're going to get into livestock, you want to make sure that you go in with a very good system. Incomplete livestock feed records are always an issue, and they've really tightened up this year on some of the regulations around livestock. And so that's something that if you're getting into livestock, take the time to really get a good record keeping system down. They want feed as fed records, meaning they don't want to just see what you purchased. They want to see records of what you actually fed. You can simplify those by adapting them to your operation. Say, if you have a record that says, okay, every day this week we fed this, or every day this month we fed this, but it has to be complete. Production and sales records, often people struggle to keep those organized, and it's something that we always need to see. Natural resource records, like I said, that throws people for a loop because it's new and a lot of people don't really understand what it is, but it is very easy. And then equipment cleaning records is another one that people miss a lot. Okay, you can push me forward. Audit exercises are always required. This is something that is kind of the meaty part of inspection. For a farm inspection, if you don't purchase any organic products, then we're mostly just looking to verify the production on your farm. But if you purchase any organic products, or if you're a handler, they have to do a mass balance exercise. This is per the NOP, they require this. And so that means we need to look at purchase records, we need to look at sales records, feeding records, inventory records. And so make sure you've got a good idea going in how you're going to do that exercise. It does require keeping inventory, and sometimes that is where people get thrown there, is they don't have a regular inventory system. And then a trace back exercise just verifies that there's traceability either from your production or purchase of an organic product that links it back to the last certified operation or through your production. You flip me forward. And again, ultimately, the inspector's job is to check all the boxes. We're there to observe and report. And that means that if there's an issue, your inspector's obligated to report it. It's nothing personal. Don't feel bad. That's what they're paid to do, is to come out and check on those things. And just because something's written up doesn't mean that it's going to turn into an issue or a non-compliance or anything. Inspectors are limited in their job scope. They cannot advise or consult, and especially particularly on any barriers to certification. So can't recommend products, can't tell you how to change on your farm to make something compliant that's not. So you should always ask your inspector questions, but do know that there's a limit to how helpful they can be on certain things. When your inspector comes, they're going to want to see all the parcels, all the facilities, everything. So be ready to give that tour. Don't wait for them to ask. Just know that they want to see everything when they come. Same with the records. Have it all ready to go. Have it all ready to hand over. This is where I mentioned that if you don't have a record, make a record. Even if it's blank and it says there's no sales or there's no inputs, have something there. Record format can be whatever you make of it. It can be your handwritten notes. It can be your calendar. It can be photos, posts. It can be a lot of things, but it has to be auditable and understandable. And so if things are organized in a way that makes sense, you can use it. You can advance me. You're the expert in your business. So your inspector doesn't necessarily know about your crop, doesn't necessarily know about your region. And so it is important to kind of lead the tour, tell them what's going on. Don't expect that they know everything. So do be clear, do provide details. You're the expert in your business. They're the expert in certification requirements. So sometimes I get sent to a farm that I've never been to that kind of farm before. I usually tell people, I've never been to this type of farm before. I'm excited to learn about your industry. Teach me what I need to know. Not every inspector will come out and say that, but it is good to just provide a very complete explanation of things, a complete tour, be very thorough, and they won't have to ask you all the questions and you won't run into as much confusion. And everybody does it differently. Everybody keeps records differently. Everybody refers to different things differently. And so just don't assume that anybody knows exactly what's going on already. Your inspector might ask you things in a vague way or might ask the same question multiple times. Don't overthink it. Give your best answer. Sometimes that is a tactic. Sometimes that is because we don't know exactly what question to ask, but just go with the flow. Okay, Grace, I'm going to flip me forward. CCOF charges $85 an hour. I'm not sure what some of the other certifiers cost. And so preparing for inspection can save you a lot of money. I see a lot of people whose inspections take a lot longer than they need to because they're not prepared. So get everything ready ahead of time. And if you need to kind of set the pace at your inspection, move things along, go ahead and do it. Grace, you want to flip me forward? I know I've been talking for a while. I'm going to try to reach the end here. Ultimately, if you are struggling or if you want to breeze through this better, consider hiring a consultant. You might pay a lot for a consultant to come in and help you get set up and then never need them again. You might have somebody that you keep on to help you with inspections, anything like that. This slide has my website, but there's also a consultant directory at CCOF, and there's a lot of other inspectors or professionals in the fields that also do consulting, and they can do a lot of different things for you if that is something you're interested in. Okay, I'll wrap up there. Did I have any questions specific for me in my thing, or do we want to come back to those later?
Thanks, Megan. There are a couple of questions that I would like to get your thoughts on. We can wait till the end, though.
Okay, great.
All right, Kristen, it's all you.
Thanks, Grace. Thanks, Megan. Um, I am here to talk about what certification is like on the farm side. So you're certainly going to hear echoes of what's already been covered. I'm going to show you what records we keep and what they look like, and hopefully demystify it a little bit. Um, yeah, and everyone does it differently. Again, I'm certainly no record keeping expert, but it works for us. We've been certified since 2019. So excited to share with you what we've come up with that works on our context. You could go to the next slide, Grace. So we weren't certified for 4 years when we first got off the ground, and we really didn't need to be until we reached a certain point in scale in markets we were wanting to access that made it more of a necessity for us. Specifically, we really wanted to sell to cooperative grocery stores that put a premium on local organic produce. They might still buy uncertified produce, but they pay a lower price. And if anyone has it organically or available organic, they're going to preference that. So that was huge for us. Higher prices across the board, maybe not at farmers markets, but definitely in wholesale markets. Also getting tired of fielding questions about whether we were organic and needing to sidestep using the actual term when we were certainly growing with organic practices and ethos. And then we also leased a larger farm site, and our landlord wanted us to have organic certification as part of our lease. And we've also found, although we didn't know this back in 2019, is that a lot of the grants that are available for farms these days really prioritize regenerative practices and want to see evidence that your farm is growing. They don't usually use the word organic, but in a way that's building soil that's good for your community, and it's helped us leverage that to get grants. Next slide. So for us, this is kind of my list that I'm making sure that I have when our yearly inspection comes up. Some of the things that Megan covered, we don't need. We're not doing any equipment sharing. We don't need a log for that. But for our farm, our fertility inputs, all of the receipts, which can be a little bit tricky when you're getting little paper receipts from the feed store. So we make sure that we're scanning and saving those each year. All of our information about what crops we're planting, when we're planting them, and where we're planting them on our farm, our harvest records, our sales records, our organic seed search to prove that we are prioritizing purchasing organic seeds, the seed orders, and our biodiversity log. Those are kind of my key records. Next slide. So this is what our crop plan looks like. And if you don't already have a crop planning tool that you're using, I really love the one that we've landed on. We've used a few, and you can find it if you want to become a Patreon member of an awesome farm that runs habit farming. They have lots of good info about tools for record keeping, organization, and they have an Airtable, which is very similar to Excel, that is tracking your crop variety, your greenhouse date, your field date, the quantity that you're putting in the field, and when you plan to harvest that. And this is a really important tool, whether or not you're getting organic certified, to have a plan for your farm. But it also just so happens to check many of the boxes of what your inspector is going to need to see. It's searchable, it's really easy to navigate, and that's kind of the baseline of everything that we're doing on the farm that we're able to show. And we're updating it in real time. So it's built out in the winter with everything we plan to do. And then if we miss a week of lettuce planting, we're able to pull that off. We can shift dates. It's all very changeable in the moment. And it's a really easy tool for anyone on our crew to use, which we really appreciate. Next slide. And a lot of our records are just kept on really simple spreadsheets like this. It's really nothing too fancy. The crop plan has formulas and is a little more built out, but for our fertility input record that's showing what kind of amendments, compost, fertilizer we're putting out on the farm, we just have an Excel doc. It's in a shared folder. Anyone who is tasked with applying fertilizer can use it. We're tracking the date, the block on our farm, which each block is a half acre. So what area of the farm we're applying that fertilizer, which beds it's going on, what the product is. So the product name and the formulation, and then the quantity applied per bed. And I also have a note on here about how much a bed is, which for us is 3 feet by 100 feet. So that's also searchable, super easy to pull up. We keep all of our records compiled in a Google Drive, so we like having them online and accessible. You could also write the exact same thing by hand and have it available. So it's really whatever works for you and your context. And then we're very diligent that when we get these receipts for our input purchases, we're saving them. They often only happen, once or twice a year. They're easy to lose track of, and we just have it flagged as super important to make sure we have the invoices and receipts for those products handy that prove we bought what we said we're applying in the volume that we've said we've applied it. Next slide. Another super simple spreadsheet. So when we're making our seed orders, we're always prioritizing organic seed. But as if you're a vegetable grower, there's a lot of seeds that aren't available organically. Certain varieties that have advantages in our climate, certain colors of things. We grow flowers. A lot of flower seeds are not available organically. And so if we're ordering, we'll say, our romaine variety is salvias. It really excels in our field. It's super slow to bolt. We can grow it in the summertime. We haven't found a comparable organic variety. And what your inspector is going to need to see is that you've checked, I think it's 3 or 4 different locations to make sure that you've done due diligence, that you have tried to get that seed organically. And it's just one extra step when you're making your seed order you can't see the other 2 columns, but like the 4 seed companies that we generally use, quick search, couldn't find it there, no. And then in real time, your seed search is done, you'll have it available when inspection time comes. And since we're doing all of our seed ordering online, I'm just saving all of those receipts in an email folder and can pull them up when they're tracking. Generally, it's like one crop they'll go through and make sure you actually bought the seed that you said you used that's in your crop plan, and you can have that receipt available. Next slide. And then harvest records. So we are primarily a harvest to order farm. We aren't picking 400 pounds of broccoli and then figuring out where to sell it. We're selling 400 pounds of broccoli and picking it. So a lot of our harvest records are our sales records. And we're, before our inspection, pulling all of those by month into a searchable PDF. So we use QuickBooks, all of our invoices are in there, importing them into a PDF, and then they're searchable for your inspector to be able to say, okay, you sold 200 pounds of carrots to 24 carat on this date. Super quick for them to go through and find each of those sales. And then the only like non-harvest to order component of our business is that we also have a farm stand. And in that case, we're just, picking a certain amount each week and hoping that it all sells. And this has been a record that we've struggled with getting a good system for keeping. We've done paper, we've tried to do it online, and because there's a lot of small crops, weird volumes, it's often happening like, 2 or 3 times a week in the morning to have a little restock. We found that the best record for us is just to have a whiteboard that everyone can contribute to, and then each week at the end of the sales week, I take a picture, I throw it in a folder in our Google Drive. Super easy, simple. When we were like keeping paper records, they would be in the wash pack and get all wet, and I'd have this like binder of messy wet paper for the inspector. So as you can see, it really does not have to be super complicated. As long as it's tracked and it's accessible, it will work. Next slide. And then a few others that it's been really helpful to know that we need and have on hand so we're not frantically searching is we keep a folder with pictures of basically the cool animals and amphibians on the farm through the year as we find them, and that has worked for us as a biodiversity record. Also, bonus points for your crew to say, send me pictures of cute frogs that you see. They love that. We buy in a very, very small amount of produce for our farm stand, so making sure we have all of the records for their organic certificates, our invoices of purchase, and we also make sure we put that on our farm stand tracking so that we have records of what we've put out and sold. Our gross sales for the previous year, our organic registration, because they're all online, we also have all of the previous years of certification records available and our soil tests. Next slide. And as you can tell, what has really worked for us is just as much as possible, really keeping these records in real time so that when our inspection gets scheduled, I'm not frantically trying to recreate a document that says what we've done for the year. That's been very key to make it not stressful and easy to go through the certification process. We really try to externalize the record keeping to everyone else, make sure that they know what's important that gets written down, and that it's a joint responsibility for everyone that's involved in the work that's happening. Like I mentioned, we put it all online. It's been super easy for our inspector to kind of get the broad overview, access what they need that way. Like Megan mentioned, looking at our OSP, saying, is this really what we're still doing? Do we need to make changes beforehand? Once you're certified, you'll have a certification specialist that is going to be available for questions like, can I buy non-organic strawberry crowns if I can't find organic? Really great resource to make sure you understand what you should and shouldn't be doing if you have questions. I always do a quick walk around and just make sure that everything on our materials list is what's in the field and that we didn't miss anything. There's a really great materials search tool that CCOF, who's our certifier, has. And before you purchase anything, you can search and make sure that it's allowable. And I'm always trying to do that, but making sure nothing slipped through the cracks. And then just generally, our inspector makes a lot more money per hour than we do as farmers. So we try as much, like I'm pulling all of those records, I'm doing that walk, I'm getting everything together so that when my inspector shows up, it's generally for us been 1 to 2 hours tops, and we're a 7-acre, very diverse vegetable farm. So just trying to make it simple, trying to make it quick for them, and not ending up with the $1,000 bill because I don't have the right records where I need them to be, and just, yeah, preparing in advance. We don't have much time left, and I think we have some good questions, so I'll wrap up there.
Thank you so much, Kristen. That was great. Really appreciate you bringing screenshots of your different record keeping systems. I am going to just round us off here with a couple of resources. And someone asked in the chat if we would be sharing this presentation with folks who registered for the workshop, and we will. I will upload it to the SCED workshop page and should automatically send you a message. But if not, check back there later today and you can access the photos, all of the content, and then also the links that are in the resources page here. CAFF has technical assistance and resources available through our webpage. There's also the UC Organic Agriculture Institute that has lots of great extension work on organic. And then CCOF runs the Farmer to Farmer Organic Mentorship Program, which you can learn more about. It matches a experienced organic farmer or mentor with someone who's just starting out in organic agriculture who is the mentee. And so yeah, check that out. And then I also wanted to mention a new CAFF program that we have. There's been some questions in the Q&A and in the chat about cost share programs or funding that's available to help farmers transition. And we're super excited to announce the start of our Organic Transition Pilot Program. This program supports farmers who are transitioning to certified organic agriculture. So only available for folks who are not currently certified. And farmers who are granted or who apply and are granted into this program can receive up to $30,000 in direct financial support and technical assistance to transition to organic. The application is on our website. The application opened today and it's open until March 23rd. We are looking for farmers in the Bay Area, the San Joaquin Valley, and Southern California specifically to match you up with a technical assistance provider in person, but we are accepting applications from farmers across California. So encourage folks to apply. There's lots of more information about the application, what the funding can be directed to, so eligible and ineligible costs, and the application on our website at caf.org/OTPP. You can direct any questions to me, Grace, at caf.org. Related to this, we've been working on this for several months and are very excited to announce this opportunity and get some more farmers support to transition to organic. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have about 15, maybe a little less minutes for questions. And there are some questions in the Q&A that I wanted to ask to Megan and Kristen. And so let us know if there are other questions that you have by using the Q&A function. I also wanted to give a shout out to our funders for this workshop, the USDA Transition to Organic Partnership Program, and we receive funding through the CCOF Foundation through that program as well. So I'm going to ask these questions, and Megan and Kristen, if either of you have thoughts, I also have some, but I wanted to open it up to both of you too first. Jennifer asks, why is just using a tiny amount of nitrogen not allowed, and do imports have actual proven certification records like locally produced specialty produce? Megan, do you know this question in regards to imports?
Yeah, so in regards to imports, yes, anything that is on your grocery shelf labeled as organic needs to be certified to USDA standards. It is held to the same standard as anything that we're producing in this country. One thing that came up this previous year we had a lot of new rules in organic come out in the strengthening organic enforcement rules, and that did apply to importers as well. So it used to be that there was a lot of brokers and importers that weren't organic certified, but were doing transactions to facilitate the movement of those. And now all of those brokers and importers now have to be certified. So that has tightened up a little bit of the control around imports. And so, we continue to understand that that's always a concern for people and, making it a little bit harder for anything to get somewhere where it's not supposed to be. But yes. Do you want me to answer the question about nitrogen as well?
Yeah, if you have some thoughts.
Yeah, so it says, why is just using a tiny amount of nitrogen not allowed? And so nitrogen is allowed, synthetic nitrogen is not. So there's certainly a lot of organic, non-synthetic sources of nitrogen that are allowed and totally approved. So there is options. Synthetic nitrogen is not allowed because that's just not what the standards allow. To create a certification system, you have to create a system that draws lines. And so even if it's just a tiny bit, it just doesn't fit into where the line is for certification. And, I think that's the simple answer. I don't think anybody's saying, oh, a tiny bit is going to cause big problems. It's that a tiny bit doesn't fit into the certification rules.
And for a farm to know, or for a farm to determine what sources of nitrogen are allowed, would you recommend them going to the regulation and looking at that?
Yeah, so and the basis of the rules is pretty straightforward, is synthetic and non-synthetic. There are some exceptions for certain things that cross the lines. OMRI, OMRI, is the Organic Materials Review Institute. Their website, they publish a pretty comprehensive list of everything. Like Kristen said, CCOF has a searchable tool, so you can put in different like brand names of products or different types of things, and it will come back to you and tell you if those are allowed, not allowed, or allowed with restrictions is another thing. There are definitely some things that are allowed if you meet certain qualifications to use them or not. So there is a lot of places where you can search those things.
And Kristen, is that tool only available through the tool through CCOF? Is it only available to farms who are certified by CCOF?
I think it's public.
Yeah, I think it is public because when you are submitting your initial application, you do need to submit your materials list. I think I maybe didn't know that when I was doing my first certification, but it's a really great and tool that's super easy to use.
Okay, thanks. I'll look for it so I can include it in the list of resources that we send out. Okay, the next question is, when do you need to send updates to the OSP to the certification body? Do you upload the new updated documents only or the whole list of documents?
Every certifier is going to have kind of different ways that you communicate with them. But any changes should kind of be sent in real time, especially if there are any changes that like impact your compliance or impact your eligibility for certification. But even if it's just if you're changing your crops, you should send in an updated crop list for the year. Your materials list, you always need to get those updated before you use them. And so you should really just kind of be in a habit of constant updates, even if they're minor.
Kristen, anything to add there about how your farm does it in practice?
Yeah, in practice, the biggest changes to our OSP are coming at this time of year. We're in our planning season. We're purchasing materials. We may be changing our plans for fertility or yeah, adding or subtracting crops. So I do generally try to look, sometime early in the new year and submit them before farming gets very, very hectic. And then the other big flags for me are new materials purchases in the season, or if anything in our system is like changing dramatically, um, which is relatively rare. I'd say I'm usually submitting one or two changes a season.
Thanks, Kristen. Okay, Delia has a question. Materials used without prior approval. What if you're just starting out, have to wait 3 years or so before getting organic certification? So you're in the transition period. How do you get prior approval when you have to farm and keep records before getting certified?
Keep a list. When you submit your application for certification, there will be something that you fill out that says list all of the materials that were used on this property in the last 3 years, and you'll have to list those out and you will sign that. All of organic certification is ultimately an honor system. So it's up to you to report those in good faith. So keep track of everything that you're using and make sure that it is all things that are allowed for organic use. Obviously, you don't have to, if you're not certified and you're not working with a certifier, you don't have to get anything approved, but you need to be making sure that it is, you know, allowable, not prohibited materials. And yeah, they won't necessarily require receipts or anything for before you're certified. You can apply for certification while your fields are in transition. So let's say you apply to prohibited material today, you could still apply for certification tomorrow, and a certifier would take you in, you would have an inspection, but you would basically just have a date on there that said you're not allowed to sell your products as organic until you hit this 3-year date. And if you do that, then of course your certifier will be there approving things and inspecting you along the way to make sure that you get to that without any issues.
Thanks, Megan. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna go to this next question about manure management. And so maybe Megan, you know this one. Maybe not. That's okay if we need to follow up with this person. They say, I know that grazing sheep in an orchard is considered targeted manure management. Does allowing wild and domestic geese, wild turkey and heritage turkey, rabbits and deer access to an orchard also count as targeted grazing for manure management?
So this is one of those things that it's, I don't know, always everybody has like different interpretations and understandings sometimes of these livestock and manure things and how they apply in smaller circumstances where it's not the obvious answer. And so I would say call your certifier or your potential certifier and have a conversation with them, because what you're going to need to do is make sure that whatever you're doing is included in your organic systems plan. So that way, when your inspector comes out, this is what we do. It's in the approved plan. Our certifier has approved this. Everybody knows what's going on. So that way you don't have somebody who comes to your farm and has a different understanding of the rules around manure and gives you a hard time about it. So make sure that, just talk to the certifier about exactly what your process is.
Thank you. Barbara asks, is it okay to use cow manure from a conventional farmer, non-organic, on our organic fields?
Yes.
And would they need to get prior approval for this from their certifier?
Yep. So you would put manure on your materials list. And then I mentioned earlier that CCOF has like an affidavit that you'd fill out. So if it was from a farmer that you knew, you would have them sign this form that says there's nothing prohibited in this manure. Or if it's coming from somewhere that they already kind of have in their list, or if it's something that has an OMRI certificate, anything like that, that'll easily just get added. But yeah, they do not require the manure to be from organic animals.
Thank you. And then, let's see. And then Katharina asks, which I think Katharina asked this before you got to this part in your presentation, Kristen, but anything that either of you want to add? Thanks for a great set of presentations. Do you have tips on how to organize your records prior to inspection or other tips on how to make sure that inspections go as quickly as possible.
I have one thing that I didn't mention, but is definitely a strategy for me, which is that I don't chit chat with my inspector, even if I think they are an awesome, lovely person. You are paying them to chit chat with you. Try to be very efficient and professional and stick to the basics of what we're there to do, which has worked for us.
Yeah, I had that in my slides and I kind of breezed by it because we were running out of time. But truly, there's time to chit chat as you walk around or drive around sometimes. But make sure that you're always kind of keep moving or save conversations till the end of the inspection because a lot of time your inspector would love to hang out and talk to you for 15 minutes at the end and not charge you for it. But ultimately, they're going to write the time that they showed up and the time that they left, and kind of anything in between is going to be on your bill. So that is a good tip. I really like Kristen's record keeping. She did a really good job of kind of showing how they did things that made sense on their farm that didn't take a lot of extra time. And it really is about just creating a system that works for you. Spreadsheets are fantastic. If you can have a spreadsheet that has a different tab for each of the things and you can quickly bounce through all that, that's a really quick and easy way to organize your information. If it's stacks of receipts or anything, just keep everything in order by date, put it in a file. You don't ever have to print anything for your inspector. They can always look at things digitally. Every inspector is different, so you never know exactly what to expect, but you can try to email them things ahead of time. So they have a preview of what your records are. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, well that is it for our questions. Thank you, Megan and Kristen, so much. You're both wells of knowledge, so we really appreciate your time and being here with us today. And Guido, I think we're going to pass it off to you to wrap us up.
Thank you.
Maybe Guido needs a little bit more time. He usually shows like a conclusion video, so stick around if you want to see that.
We can keep talking if you want. There's always more to say about organic certification. I think I saw.
Would you say that my estimate of $700 to $1,000 is right based on what you see, Megan, or do you ever see the cost?
It is really hard thing.